Hello, hello. I'm Sasha of Sasha Makes Cards, and welcome to this month's YouTube hop for a cherry on top crafts. Now, the theme for this month's hop is pick a shape. So, as you can tell here, I decided to pick a rectangle as I'm making my card quite literally out of a bunch of cards. I didn't think of that until now. For this project, I am using the Royal Flush stamp set from Honeybee Stamps. This stamp set is a part of their Perfect Match release. And if you saw my haul video that I posted of my latest design team package from A Cherry on Top Crafts, which includes this stamp set, I also got one of the die sets from this release. I got the Roll the Dice Lovely Layers die set, also from Honeybee. And my original plan was to actually use the stamp set that I'm using here as well as that die set together in one card. I was going to use it for the card I'm making here. However, as I got going, I kind of just I really liked how it was coming along, and I just wanted to keep with only the cards, so that's what I did. As I'm picking out my supplies that I'm going to be using for my projects, I have a general plan in mind of the different cards or possibly other things that I'm going to make with the supplies that I get. So when I was picking out the supplies for this card, I knew obviously I wanted to use this stamp set, and I thought I was going to use that die set. And for the most part, my plans usually stay the same. I usually end up doing exactly as what I had planned. But by the time I finished this card and got all of the cards glued onto the card, which you will see later on, I just decided I really liked just this design. I didn't want to add anything else to it, so I just kept it simple and I kept it as it is. But anyways, I started by first stamping the 3 cards that are included in the stamp set multiple times using just a black ink. For this, I used the Gina K Obsidian ink cube onto white cardstock. Now, I didn't know exactly how many I needed, so I just stamped quite a few. In the end, I actually ended up using almost all of them. I only had 2 left over, but I just put it in the package, stored it with the stamp set so that next time I need them, I already have 2 ready to go. But once I had those all stamped, I then trimmed them using my guillotine trimmer. When I first started trimming them, I was trying to trim multiple cards at once. So since I stamped them in rows of 3, I was trying to trim off all the excess on every card all in one go. But because I did stamp them in a straight line, it just wasn't working. So some would have more paper trim on it than others. So I decided just to trim them all individually. So I just roughly cut out each card and then went in and trimmed off the excess off of each individual card. Also, you may have noticed when I was stamping them, a couple of the cards have a little bit of ink where there's not supposed to be ink. I was originally just going to restamp these cards, but because I knew the design that I was doing, most of them were going to be trimmed. On the entire card, there's only one card that is untrimmed. I knew that most of them I could kind of adjust it in a way that any pieces that have extra ink on them can just be trimmed off. Once I had all of my cards for my card all trimmed out and ready to go, I then use a round corner punch that I have to round the corners on each individual card. Since the stamps for these cards themselves don't have super pointed, sharp corners, I thought it would look a little bit better if I used the round corner punch to round the corner on the stamped cards. After I was done all the trimming and the corner rounding of my cards, I forgot to stamp the sentiment that I was going to use for this card, so I brought my Misty back out and stamped the sentiment that is included in the stamp set that says "Lucky You." I had realized I'd forgot to stamp the sentiment right after I put my Misty away from stamping all the cards, so I just decided to finish up with the cards for the card and then stamp it after. There is a really nice sentiment die cut included in the Perfect Match release that I was thinking about getting for this project. It says "Lucky to have you." However, I decided just to stick with the stamp set as I thought the look of the Lucky You sentiment included in the stamp set would go really nicely with the look of the cards, especially because I knew I was going to keep it black and white, so I thought the sentiment would just look really nice with the design I was planning. Although I will say another reason I wanted to use the Lucky to Have You die cut rather than just the stamp at first was I was worried that I wouldn't be able to fussy cut the Lucky You sentiment from the stamp set so that it would actually look nice. I used to always worry about fussy cutting things. I quite like it now and I'm pretty good at it. At least I think so. But I was worried that because it's a really nice script font that I wouldn't be able to cut it out and not have it look a little bit messy, but I think it worked out well. Now that I have all of the images stamped and cut and ready to go, I started to plan the actual design of the card. For this, I decided to use some tape to tape the cards onto the card before I glued them down and finalized the placement of everything. Doing this is definitely a little bit more time consuming rather than just gluing all the cards down, but I wanted to take this extra step to tape everything down and plan out how I was going to place all of the stamped images onto the card. Because whenever I am gluing down a lot of images like this and I don't tape them down, it often just kind of goes all over the place. Especially with this design, I'm trying to line them up. And with that, I want to be able to move the card base around as I'm gluing everything down. So taping all of the cards onto my card base just made sense. As for the tape I used for this, I just used painter's tape. I find it's low tack enough that it works as long as you're careful when peeling it off of the paper, making sure not to rip it. Of course, will rip the paper, but as long as you peel it off carefully, it works great. And if that's not low tack enough, sometimes I will put it on whatever article of clothing I'm wearing, rip it off, and it will kind of act as a little bit of a lint roller type situation. Pick up some of the lint from my clothing, and that will make it more low tack. Of course, you can just use low tack tape, but I find that this works pretty well. And the great thing about using something like painter's tape is it's very easy to get, and it's also very cheap, which I like because I just get my roll from the dollar store, so it works great. After I am done figuring out the placement of all the cards on my card, I can then glue everything down. For this, I'm just using some liquid adhesive, peeling off each individual card, taking off that piece of tape that I put on earlier, and gluing it onto the card base itself. As I'm doing this, there are a few cards you may notice get moved around a little bit. This is the good thing about planning the design ahead of time with the tape is that it gives you the freedom to move around some of the elements of your design as it's not, like I said earlier, completely finalized yet. It really helps me as I often make decisions on the fly. So it makes it very easy to move around the different elements. For example, the one card on the very corner of the card, I decided I didn't quite like the placement of it and how it aligned with the other cards on the card. So I decided to mess around with it a little bit and adjust how it is placed on the final card base. I have said the word card so many times throughout this video. I hope it's not too confusing. I, I hadn't thought about the fact that I would be placing cards on a card. So I hope I'm doing an all right job at explaining it and it's not too much. After all the cards were glued down onto the main card, I trimmed off all the excess, all the overhanging cards on the card using a pair of spring assisted scissors. You can use a paper trimmer for this, a guillotine, whatever you have. When it comes to trimming off the excess of overhanging design like this, I like to use scissors as I to me it's just a little more accurate. I don't know. Maybe it's not, but this is what I prefer to do. There have been times when I've used my guillotine trimmer for this and I've accidentally chopped off a little bit of the card itself. So I find, at least for me, it's a little more accurate to use the scissors as I can line it up a little bit better and I don't have to worry about accidentally giving my card a little bit of a haircut, which is not what I want. To finish everything off, once I had done all the trimming, there was one spot that I decided to add just a little bit more card too. So I used one of the scraps that I just trimmed off, one of the corners that obviously hadn't been cut, glued that on, trimmed that off, and then I glued down the sentiment using some liquid adhesive to officially finish everything off. And that is the completed card project. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out the description below for a complete list of all the design team members participating in this hop and to hop along for a chance to win a $25 gift card to shop at a Cherry on Top Crafts. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.